It is now 5:02 on the 5th of April, 2021. And now call to order the meeting of the Policy Committee of the Belton Independent School Board of Trustees. Any public comments?
No.
All right. Okay, man, I guess take it from there. We'll just go down the agenda.
Sounds good. Well, thank you all for your time tonight. We have multiple policies to bring you. Most of them, I don't think are going to be very lengthy discussions. I think a lot of them are going to move pretty quickly, but we're going to get started with Jennifer Lane and policy CDA local other revenues and focusing on investments.
Thanks. So policy CDA local is our investment policy. And recently we have seen a change in the maximum maturity date for commercial paper. The maturity date has been moved from 270 days to 365. However, we had our policy at 108 days, and we were proposing a change to 270 days. We didn't think it was necessary to take advantage of the 270 days prior to this year, but we're hoping that with the increased maturity date or maturity range that we can look into broadening our investment pool and see some higher interest rates possibly with increasing our maturity term. That is the only change proposed in this policy.
Jennifer, do you have any concerns about changing that from 180 to 270? That's on page 1. Item number 7 is in that policy. Is there any concerns that you have about it or anything
No.
you should be worried about?
It will not increase significantly any risk associated with commercial paper. So I'm comfortable with moving it to the 270. We do like to try to stay below the allowable maturity days.
Historically, have we seen any, if we had a 270 before, that we would have benefited from it?
Well, not really, just in the recent months, we've seen where it would be a slight difference. Not a significant difference, but a slight difference.
And this is brought to us, recommended by our financial advisor too, right? That thought this might give us some maximum flexibility on some things.
Yes, our investment consultant.
I see, okay. You don't want 270, why not 280 or 260?
You know, I think because in the financial markets, they base months on 30 days.
Yeah, I see.
And 9 months is 270 days.
Okay. I mean, it's not like a silly question, but I'm just wondering if there's something connected to it. Anything else, Jennifer, that you need to talk to us about?
No, that's it. And this policy, you all as a board review each year and in the August-September timeframe. Okay.
Can I ask you a couple questions while we're here right now?
Sure.
Okay. Going to it says annual review on page 7 of the policy.
Page 7.
Uh-huh.
Which page is that of the policy?
That's the last page.
5 of 5. Okay.
Yeah, probably fine.
Okay. Thank you.
I know it says not less than annually, but I thought somewhere where we're given a report. Do we get reports before, not just?
Yes.
Okay.
The board receives a monthly report in the
Monthly.
financials.
Okay,
You receive a quarterly report in the financials.
Right.
And then there's also the annual report that's provided typically in September. And that's also where I bring the resolution of your review
Okay. All
of
right.
the policy as well.
Okay. I've never looked at this policy though, so that's where that stems from.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I don't have any questions. Jan? Chris?
I'm somewhat curious, why not 360, right? I mean, it doesn't mean you have to exercise that, right? But if that would give you an extra tool just in case, I don't know. I mean,
No, that's a great question.
it's ultimately your comfort level, but
Well, and the reason why we don't want to do actually it's 365, sorry, the 365 is because that's usually private placement commercial paper, and that's a little bit above the risk tolerance that I think we should go with.
okay.
what does the government code allow?
It does allow 365,
Okay.
but, you see a lot of cities and municipalities going out that far.
Okay. What's been your experience with other school districts and what they do?
And you know, I that's an area that I really haven't dove really deeply into, but I can definitely check with my.
No, I
peers.
just.
But
out of
our
curiosity.
investment advisor, she works with a lot of school districts, and this was also her recommendation as well.
Okay,
So this is not less than annually, right? And so-
that's what it says.
And I get that, right, because you don't want to be changing investment strategies all the time.
Right.
But if something were to come up, it really was appropriate, that was more than the 270, but less than,
Right.
you know, is that something we have the ability to revisit if it was really gonna be financially advantageous to us, or?
Yes, we can revisit this policy at
okay.
any time.
Well, expanding on what Chris's question is, I mean, if you see something coming up, if the investment folks see something coming up, say, we need to take advantage of this right now. I mean, are they allowed to make changes as they deem necessary?
Yes, and remember, this is only for commercial paper.
Okay,
That's just one investment instrument that we use, and we try not to use a lot of it, simply because it's, with corporations. We utilize our pools and we utilize a lot of collateralized CDs and other instruments that also give us a decent rate of return.
Okay.
And I see that tongue in cheek right now.
Yeah, I understand.
Because,
Something better than zero.
yes, that's what we're striving for. But we also, for the other instruments, we have maximum maturities of much longer.
All right. Anything else?
All good.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Jennifer. So that's going to be a first reading. If you have other questions on it, then let us know prior to the board meeting. We'll make any appropriate changes that you suggest that we do. But 270 what was recommended by our investment specialist that we have. So we'll go to EPA local. This is just your Schiller compensation and benefits, and we talked a little bit about this the last time.
Thank you for that. So we did talk about this last time. We talked, I think I shared some examples of other districts and kind of what they have in their policy, specifically regarding pay during closure and premium pay during emergency closure as well. The two things that we heard in our conversations last month was really about a policy that reflected continuing pay without going to get that board approval first, being clear on that, and then about providing a premium pay section. And then, and then with verbiage on who can declare a closure. And so in your policy, I've updated in blue there, the pay during closure. So during an emergency closure, all employees shall continue to be paid for the regular duty schedule, unless otherwise provided by board action. Following an emergency closure, the board shall adopt a resolution or take board action establishing the purpose and parameters of such payments. So we would pay individuals, and then we'd come back to y'all and share the parameters of the next board meeting of what that pay resulted in, or how we chose to pay those. And then the premium pay actually provides premium pay during emergency closure. Again, that's an additional section that we would add. Non-exempt employees who are required to work during an emergency closure due to natural disaster, health epidemic, inclement weather, or other event as declared by a federal, state, local officials, superintendent, or the board. I think in some of the policies we reviewed last time, it didn't include superintendent or local board, so we made sure that those were added into there. And then you can go on and see there, it does allow for pay at 2 times the regular rate of pay, and then overtime for the hours worked over 40 hours per day. So, does that encompass kind of what we were talking about last month, you think?
So this is for non-exempt employees and then staff, so there's 2 parts here, right?
This would be, we would pay for all employees, and then the non-exempt employees would be paid, that are asked to come in would be paid 2 times their regular rate. And then overtime would apply.
So when it says staff required to work, they're gonna be paid time and a half,
No,
no?
2x.
2 times,
2x according to
okay?
Yeah.
But overtime pay, so if you work more than 40 hours, I mean, when I first read this, I thought, well, if you work more than 40 hours, you're only gonna get time and a half.
Yeah, that
Or less than that, you get double, is that right?
And we can provide more clarity in this. We do start out that premium pay during emergency closure, that first sentence there, it talks about non-exempt employees. And specifically, this is pertaining to those non-exempt employees.
Okay, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So I better not work more than 40 hours, or I'm gonna lose my double time, then I'm gonna drop to time and a half. I mean, anybody else read it that way? I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's how I read it. So is it, okay, so is it just 2X or is it effectively 3X? Right, because if everybody's gonna get 1X, and then if they work, it's 2X.
that's right.
So is it effectively 3X?
In the event of overtime?
No, in the event that they actually get called
No,
in to work.
Jennifer Lane and I have had this conversation too. So it's if we're closed and you don't have to come into work, then it's just your regular rate of pay, it's your regular hourly rate. If you're asked to come into work and you're not exempt employee, then if you get paid $10 an hour, you're gonna be paid $20 an hour during that time if you're asked to come into work. So it'd be 2 times your regular rate of pay. Is that what you're
Okay,
asking?
well,
So it wouldn't
yeah.
be $30, it'd be $20.
but they're not gonna get 1X for 40 hours, and then if they work 20 hours, then they get 2X for the 20 hours on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what would come home in the check is 2X.
If you came in and you worked and you physically worked 20 hours of that 40-hour work week, you're gonna get $20 an hour for those 20 hours and then $10 an hour for the remaining 20.
Right. So my only question is 2X the right number or is 1.5X the right number? Right, I mean, it's up to us.
What did you find in other districts?
So I think we saw a mixture. There was some that was time and a half and there was some that was 2 hours.
Yeah.
I think Round Rock was 2 hours if I remember right from
Yeah, I think a bunch of them were 2X.
okay, so do that again. Okay,
for the work week.
emergency closure,
Yeah, if you have an
you make
emergency.
it $10 an hour.
Yep.
You don't come in,
You get paid
Get your regular
$10 an hour.
you come in, you get $20 an hour. What if you work 41 hours?
So if you work 41 hours, you're gonna get physically work 41 hours, you're gonna get $20 per hour, up to 40, and then time and a half for that additional hour.
Okay.
So $30 an hour for that additional hour.
I think that's the part of y'all were asking about, the right clarity on that piece.
That's what, initially, that's what I was thinking about.
Like, I think it's been a year, I'll put it that way, right? So, if you think about the things that we've had over the last year, some of the things where we have, had people come in, it is an entirely different situation in an ice storm. When you have people traveling roads, trying to get to facilities, working when we're not having anybody else drive. On the flip side, we had some closures in COVID where nobody was in the building and you could have people physically come in. So I think there's always gonna be some nuance depending on the situation that we have. So it's, you live in, as a policy committee and board members, you live in the policy world. If you're more comfortable with time and a half, we can reflect that in the policy too, or if you wanna stick to 2 times, whatever.
What did we do this last time?
We did 2
2
times.
times, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 2 times would be consistent, I think, with what we've done.
But we did that by resolution,
Yeah.
right? We made it retroactive,
Yes.
so this would eliminate that issue.
That's right.
And 2 times also recognizes that, the true above and beyond from everybody else, but, yeah, I think I'm fine with it.
I don't have a problem with 2 times. Are you having a problem with the fact that it drops down after 40 hours?
Well, yeah, I was wondering, I thought, wait a minute, is that right? When I first read it, but I understand it now.
But it still doesn't go back to their.
Right, it doesn't
regular
go to 1, it does drop to 1.5.
Yeah, initially that was my issue. I thought, well, is that what we really meant? But that's what we really mean. All right, okay.
Do you know what they're talking about, Todd?
No, I'm a little bit confused about that.
So the 41st hour, right, would drop down to time and a half.
So
Well,
in Todd's example, he was talking about somebody making $10 an hour.
Yeah.
So they, in this case, his example that he used, they would make $30 an hour. Y'all are concerned, instead of $30 an hour for anything above 40 hours, your
Right.
concern is that it would be $15 an
Well,
hour
yeah, 'cause-
based on the way this reads. Am I right?
Right. But see, if I'm coming into work and there's an epidemic going on,
Mhm.
I'm subjected to, ostensibly we're paying more because first of all, we need these folks, and secondly, it's kind of an occupational hazard, so after 40 hours, the occupational hazard doesn't go away. It's still there.
So it doesn't really drop down though. I mean, maybe I'm not explaining that right. So if we're in a closure, you have somebody that's coming in, they work all week long, 40 hours. And their typical hourly rate any other given time is $10 an hour. Because they're coming in during this closure and working 40 hours, they're gonna be paid $20 an hour.
Right.
If they work 41 hours, their rate for that additional hour is gonna go to $30 an hour. Because it's
Okay,
it's
so
time and a
you're
half
going,
on that.
okay, all right, so that wasn't my understanding when we talked about this last week. Okay, I'm following you.
Because overtime is all wages earned for the week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was
Total
based
work
off
hours,
of
and that
the
calculates the overtime.
base pay and not the additional.
Well, that makes sense now. No?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Jennifer said no. Oh, you talked about
That's what it is,
Yeah, I mean, I just wanna make sure we're not gonna get ourselves in any trouble from a labor law.
No, that's-
pay standpoint.
That is, doing it that way is in compliance with.
You can pay more than you, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I understand it now.
So we're good with?
Yeah.
This is the first reading, and we'll bring it back to the the board meeting in April, and we're gonna set the meeting.
Okay. If something comes up and look at this again and then,
We'd pull it.
okay.
We would pull it before it got to the whole board vote, yeah. I don't think, again, I think this is a good change. This is one that we talked a little bit about, so we're not doing retroactive things in the future. Knock on wood, we have another issue.
Hey, John, just for the record, just clarify non-contract employees and non-exempt employees.
Yeah, so non-contract employees are gonna be individuals that don't receive a contract for.
Right, that's obvious,
SBEC,
yeah.
right? You know, SBEC certified individuals by policy are required to receive a contract. A non-exempt employee is really defined by the Department of Labor. And so anybody that doesn't meet certain exemption tests, we can be considered a non-exempt employee. That's gonna be most of your paraprofessionals and auxiliary employees.
Good.
Todd, you got the next one, I think, as well. Records management.
Okay, you have the CPC?
Yeah.
There is one change we are recommending for this.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped some. I
Just like everything.
was looking at board book. I was looking at the order on board book. I apologize. I got it off.
While you're in the hot seat.
Yeah, sorry. Todd, you're right here. We're gonna jump down. CPC?
Don't get me talking about FFXC.
Sorry.
So CPC is just one recommended change there. Records management, the way this policy reads, it says the superintendent has been the records management officer. And that's not the case. So we would like to put the language in there, superintendent or designee. Human Resources kind of was going through this, looking, reviewing the policies, because we took over records management, at least for this year. And so we want to make sure our designee is in there and just kind of provides.
Who's the designee?
Right now it's Todd. No, that's one of those, as a growing district though, I think there's some flexibility there. In smaller districts, this is exactly what you see, but as we grow, there's gonna be more specialized jobs.
So it just allows you to designate someone as a custodian of records.
Correct.
All records? I mean, is that all records?
That's correct. So you can have, when you talk about student records, somebody else in charge of student records, someone in charge of employee records, however that might be, but it gives some flexibility. And when we review policies, you make sure your practice and your policy line up, and this is one of those where our practice, it wasn't quite lined up with the policy.
In other words, someone responding to requests for copies of documents.
Right.
So
Transcripts or subpoena requests or.
And this means you could designate more than one person, one over medical or transcripts and one over, whatever else, other records we might have.
That's correct. Absolutely. And I will say this though, is what we are doing is examining our current practices to see if we do need to house it with one person in one department or to spread it out. Because currently right now, example, subpoenas come through the superintendent's office with Connie, some touch Frank in human resources, things like that. So we've got a few things that we're trying to figure out the best practice for us long term, and this policy will allow us to do that.
So do we need to put an S in parentheses after designee?
Designees.
I mean, if that's what you're thinking about, we probably should.
Yeah, I think it would probably be wise.
Yeah, because there's more than one,
Yep.
yes, there's one
It could
person,
be,
one custodian for everything.
and it could be, where, like I said, where they
How about an S and a parenthetic,
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
right?
We'll make that change, thank you, sorry I jumped down so much, I apologize.
Thank y'all, appreciate it.
If you wanna talk about FFAC,
No,
you're
no,
welcome.
I'll give that to Mike.
Mike Morgan's got, FFAC Wellness and Health Services for us.
Good afternoon. So the FFAC local is one that was bundled in update 116 from TASB. It was one of only 4 local policies that were addressed in the update. We brought this and briefly discussed it at the last policy meeting. Our wish was to pull this from the TASB 116 update and take a little bit of a deeper look into it. There were some very specific items that had been put into FFAC previously by the district, and we wanted to really make clear that we were good with what was in the policy, and it still gave our staff the ability by policy to provide the best service that we can for our students. So as you look through, we accepted most of the language that TASB had recommended. Basically, TASB had said there were elements of this local policy that were redundant. Within the policy, there were also some elements that were covered by FFAC legal, and then there were also some things that they recommended to move to administrative guidelines. So as you can go through and see the areas in red that are struck, and then the areas in blue that are added, that's all based on the recommended language that TASB gave us for this policy. The areas where we had language that we liked, that we wanted to keep, are basically the 3 bullet points under provided by parents on the first page, and the 1 bullet point with an A and B under provided by districts. And I would like to go through kind of the importance that we feel like of each one of those and give a rationale for why we would like to leave those in policy. So obviously, when we're talking about administering medication, it's always only going to be by individuals who are designated, the designated employees to do that, and also that have also received the proper training and information on how that would need to proceed. So generally, in most cases, under 1, 2, and 3, it's almost always going to be a school nurse, a campus nurse, or health services staff. And so obviously, we would like to leave it in policy that if a student has prescription medication prescribed by a doctor, that we would be able to administer that at school. That non-prescription medication for up to a period of 5 days. We felt like this, we have an experienced health services team, and there were times when this wasn't in policy that we would have parents that would make requests that we might not feel like were in the best interest of the child. So we would continue to administer non-prescription medication after the 5th day, as long as we do have communication from a doctor saying that's in the best interest of that student. The herbal substances and dietary supplements, we would like to continue to see this go through as some type of a 504 plan, because herbal substances and dietary substances are not FDA approved. They're not going to be prescribed by a physician. So if a parent does bring an herbal substance or a dietary supplement and ask our nurses to administer this to their child, we would like that to go through a process where we know that that's in the best interest of that child. And then provided by the district, this is for non-prescription medication. Basically, there would be 2 conditions where a district staff could provide non-prescription medication on an emergency basis. Generally, you would see this more along the lines with an athletic trainer or something of that sort. You have a varsity team at a contest, and a student needs an over-the-counter decongestant or something to settle an upset stomach or something along those lines. And there's really two criteria that by policy we would have to meet. Number one is we would have to have protocols established by the district's medical advisor, who would be licensed to practice medicine. So basically a standing order in effect from one of our physicians, and then it would be parental consent given. So whether that be as a form at the beginning of the year saying we give permission to administer emergency over-the-counter medication, or it could be a phone call to the parent and on a case where we didn't have that pre-consent. And really, other than that, there's no other changes to the policy based on the old policy, other than what TASB recommended, with the exclusions, like I said, that were either doubly applied within the policy, repeats from FFAC legal, or they recommended just to be covered in administrative guidelines, types of handling type materials.
Mike, just to clarify, so as we look at the strike-through version,
Yes,
the parts that are in red and that are struck through are currently in our policy, and TASB recommended taking them out.
yes,
Parts that are in black are currently in our policy that we want to keep.
yes.
And the parts that are in that light, it's a light blue on mine, I don't know what y'all are seeing on that one, but it's a really light blue. Those are additional TASB recommendations to add.
It's rewording in most cases. It's taking the current language and just rewording it to be more consistent.
Great.
Hey, Mike, on 4A and B,
Yes,
that's an and, so you have to have both, right? The standing order.
You have to have both, yes.
Okay.
yes.
But the standing order, that doesn't mean that physician saw the student, right?
No, it just means that he would give our staff basically what his recommendation would be on basically like an ibuprofen, what would be the dosage that you could give in a 24-hour period. And just like, we've talked this through with our staff too, this doesn't mean that the same student comes through the training room every day and they give them ibuprofen. I mean, after a time or two, they're probably gonna call parents and say, you probably need to take this student to the physician, get them checked out, they'll come in and ask for ibuprofen or whatever it may be.
What's emergency basis?
Emergency basis,
What would that be?
it would be a situation, like the example earlier, the one that comes most clearly to mind for me would be, you're off campus at an event and a student has a headache or upset stomach or allergies acting up, something along those lines.
Okay, or pain of some sort.
Pain of some sort, yes. We do keep those on hand, but it's not a common occurrence that we have trainers or nurses that they're handing out over the counter. It would just be on an emergency basis.
Yeah, anything?
No, I think this is all very reasonable.
Chris?
I had a couple of questions. Overall, I think it's reasonable. So I should probably know the answer to this question. I'm going to ask it anyway. So a kid brings over-the-counter pain medication to school, right? Tylenol, Advil, whatever. What does the handbook? What's the policy say about that? Like, is that? I assume that's not allowed because of this.
Yeah, it would need to be given to the nurse or to someone who's the designee for us to handle medication would be what we would outline, what we expect
With a parent note.
with the parent note.
Even if the kid's an adult?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so page 2 of 3 under the epinephrine on campus.
Yes.
That second paragraph, so the district shall ensure, right? So it basically says at least one trained individual is present on campus during all hours of campus activities. Right, so essentially, like, this puts us in a situation where, you know, if you got 3 people on campus training, those 3 people, like, one of those 3 always gotta be in, right? So we're almost keeping track of who's in and who's out on that list, right? I mean, that's essentially what we're saying.
No, and I think there could be some interpretation in my mind of when campus is open, so that, to me, that wouldn't apply to summer activities and weekend activities and after hours activities. It would be, if we're in normal campus hours, I think it would be a guarantee that we would have someone there that's trained in how to administer epinephrine.
I feel like we had this conversation.
We did, and I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head
Yeah.
around it, right? Because if you continue to read through it, right, I mean, school or campus shall be considered open for the purpose, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so during regular on-campus school hours, okay, that makes sense. And whenever school personnel are physically on-site for school-sponsored activities. So that, I mean, that leaves it pretty wide open, right? So I don't want us to get in a situation where, okay, great, we said somebody's gonna be on campus, and then we don't have somebody on campus, then what happens?
But we have to have somebody on campus.
Yeah,
So what we did was we did train everyone, and when the training went out from the principals, it was if you are going to be with any student on campus after school hours for an event, and they gave all kinds of examples like choir practice, you have to come to this training. Or,
Okay,
yes, and.
so we've really broadly trained.
Yes.
It's not like
we-
3 people, it's like,
No, it was the
the staff.
whole entire
okay,
campus.
alright,
on
well, no,
all
that makes me feel a whole lot better.
I'm with you though, I think about it, it's a Sunday afternoon, 1-act play practice, or it's a Saturday morning, and it's varsity volleyball is the only one there, one doing a film session.
Right.
So, I mean,
I'm thinking of field trips.
Okay.
Well,
I just didn't realize how narrow or broad the training was, so that's certainly helpful. Okay.
But Chris, your concern is more, when campus is open.
Well, this is pretty broad.
It's pretty broad, right?
I mean, what Mike was just talking about, right?
Yeah, when is it not open?
Right, I mean, if you're there for something that's school related, it's open,
Yeah.
according to that. So,
And the question is, on those really unlikely scenarios where it looks like it's closed, but it's not, is someone gonna be available to administer epinephrine?
like, we go to a campus for the academic awards. School's open, right, as far as I'm concerned. Right.
Kids lifting weights on a Sunday afternoon during the summer out at the field house.
I don't know, that's the way I read it.
Right, I mean, yeah.
would you like for us to ask HASB kind of for some guidance on that too, on what maybe best protects?
I don't know, what happens if we don't have somebody on campus? Like, so this policy is in place as written, and we don't have somebody on campus, and we need to do it, what happens? Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe call 911.
Well, right, but from a liability standpoint, right? Cause now we're not following our own policy.
We can definitely ask him and get some recommended language in that area if we want.
I don't know, I'm just thinking worst case scenario here. I mean,
Well, you have.
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
we
right,
have to.
that's
I mean,
kind of what
that's not a bad,
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing. After you asked that, I remember
Well,
we had this exact conversation
We did.
about a year ago when we talked about this.
Yeah.
There's gonna be some exigent circumstances that we may not be able to cover.
We can definitely get some additional language there, or some recommended language, and bring it back to y'all for another first reading if you'd like.
Mike, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you were in athletics a lot.
I think it should be one or the other. It either needs to be when we're open for hours or whenever school personnel are physically on site. I mean, I think it's contradictory when the campus is open. That's a loose definition. Is the campus open during the normal school day and school hours, or is it open anytime anyone's on campus? Well, if you take that definition, then the latter part is accurate. If you take the definition of school is open during school hours when instruction or when normal school activities are going on, then it wouldn't be whenever. I think the word whenever is what is problematic to that. Whenever school personnel are physically on site for school sponsored activities.
And I never wanna make a decision like, just because the lawyers say we gotta make a decision like that. I don't like to make decisions that way, but in this particular case, this is one where it might be.
Yeah, I keep thinking about access to, Mary Lee said that access to the unassigned EpiPens. If somebody's up there on a Sunday afternoon, either building sets for the upcoming play, they don't necessarily even have access to it, do they?
Yes, sir, they do at every AED machine is where we are.
Every AED machine. So it's more readily accessible.
Yeah, it's accessible, and when the training went out, it was assigned. And so if they had a deadline, and once the deadline came, all the ones that didn't come to training were sent another email to come and do the training until everybody had done it.
And that's an annual training.
Yes, sir. And I will say too that we're all discussing that. How are we keeping up with that annual training for a staff member that comes in maybe in November? That did not come to the training in August when it was assigned. We definitely have to have some type of list of assigned training that goes out to a staff member that might come in the middle of the day for medical stuff. My main example would be like personal hygiene, where everybody's not gonna have that training, but if they work instead, they need that training. Same thing with the epinephrine. We would want everybody trained on how to use it and to know where it's at. So if they're on campus with students, they know where to get it. Because that term is real loose because it's loose from our guidelines that we got. It says whenever the campus is open.
I mean, it sounds like we're doing the right thing from a training standpoint, right?
And access, yeah, I also do worry about position we're putting ourselves in a little bit. We can definitely study some language in that area, I think.
Yeah,
Like our athletic trainers have EpiPens, because they have an AEG. So they wouldn't have to go to one place to get it.
Yeah, I don't think the concern is anything about training, that's not all. I mean, I think we're way above board on that. The question is the exposure with, you know, all hours the campus is open.
Pretty much, yeah. And we know, like, for example, at high school, that's all the time. Right, I mean, that's pretty much all the time. Is there anything else in the policy that y'all are?
Just the very last sentence, right, there's a sort of a road number 4. I don't know that that's supposed to be carried forward as a 4. Under page 3 of 3, medical treatment, second, well, I'll call it the second paragraph.
Yeah, that's how it came from Tasby, so that seemed a little odd to me too, but that's.
I don't know, I say
Which
strike
one,
the
Chris?
4 and then,
What
Make
page
it one.
yeah.
What page you on?
It's 3 of 3.
It's the last page of the policy.
Yeah, there's a road number 4. It looks like it's just continuing the numbering from above, which seems weird.
Mine says 202. Is that wrong?
I don't know. That one.
That's an easy fix, we'll fix that.
Yeah. Other than that, I think that's great.
Great, we will bring this back to you next month, and then we'll go forward from there, so this will not be on first, second reading, video, meeting will be for the month.
So no second reading for this one until we get that part. Okay.
Correct. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
And the next 3 policies, Dr. Golden's gonna come up and talk to us about, these all have to do with our journey of a graduate program.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to go through 3 policies. We're here for a first reading on BQ, BQA, and BQB. We've mentioned these before in a previous policy committee meeting. These are our primary decision-making policies. And so BQ is a broad planning and decision-making process policy. BQA is more focused on district level planning, and BQB more on campus level planning. And so bring all 3 because these align and support each other as well. And so first with BQB, you'll notice on all 3 of these actually, we're just adding the language of our journey of the graduate competencies. Because as we've been talking all along, our goal in developing journey of the graduate is that we take those academic standards and those journey of the graduate competencies and bringing those together and using both of those, the learning is deeper. And so we want to just be explicit. That's important enough to us as a district that it's going to be a part of our district improvement planning process and our campus improvement planning process. And so how about I stop for a second on BQ local and see if you have any questions on that one particularly.
I don't think so.
Okay. BQA is the district level planning, and same thing, you'll see parallel language in there in terms of objectives being aligned to district goals and in support of growth of students' performance and journey of graduate competencies. And then on this one particularly, it just seemed like something was missing at the beginning of this policy. And in reviewing policies from other school districts, I did make the addition of just emphasizing that we support collaborative decision-making, and more minds in developing a district improvement plan, the better the improvements will be. And so just added some of that language.
Melinda, in adding that language, you worked with Holly on adding that, correct?
Yes, Holly's reviewed all 3 of these policies.
Great.
Yeah. And then finally, BQB is the campus level decision-making, and again, you'll see similar changes to the language in here around journey of the graduate competencies. Any questions for me?
We almost had to do that because of what we're doing. Yeah, we had to make that change. It wouldn't make any sense if we didn't do that, especially these 3 things, these 3 policies, right?
It's the easiest policy change ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, the easy part is this.
Yeah, right.
The hard work and the good work is actually developing the plans to make this happen, so.
Melinda gave me a good example earlier today when we were chatting about this, that if we don't do this well, then the journey of a graduate was just an exercise we went through and people will have forgotten about it in 7 years, right? If we do it well, it's ingrained in all we do, all we say, and all we work on as a school district, and it lives beyond a short lifespan of any of us in any of our roles. So it's something that influences us for a long period of time. So I think by codifying it in policy allows us to help ensure that it continues to be a part of what we can do.
So we'll bring this to our next board meeting for the second reading.
Sounds good. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So I think Todd would like to talk about CPC local.
Somehow I knew you were gonna do that.
Yeah, I think Deanna would like him to because she's
Nope.
come talk.
I want to talk about EIC.
All right, bring it on.
And I brought friends.
Reinforcement.
I brought reinforcement. No, I do want to just acknowledge Stephanie Ferguson over CTE, Barbara Epperson over our advanced academics, and Tiffany Sommerfeld over our advising. And all three of these folks are live this in the work, and they have been partnering with me on the data we've been gathering and we'll be discussing. And so I felt like it would be a great opportunity to have them here firsthand if you have any questions for them directly or just to hear our conversation so we'll know how we continue to move. So when we talked about EIC last, we did talk about really looking at 3 questions. How does ranking our students impact them during their college admissions process? For top 10%, what barriers exist that prevent our students from following their pathway, and how does class rank and course weighting impact our journey of graduate competencies? And we said in the last meeting that we would be seeking out 3 sources of data. We were going to look at our transcripts and our top 10% and see what we could find in terms of how many AP courses, dual credit courses you take, and where you land in those rankings. We said we would talk with colleges directly, and we talked about the colleges that we know our students attend most frequently. And then third, we talked about student voice and that we would be surveying our students to get their thoughts on this and where we're at in this work and how it impacts them from a large perspective. So that's a lot, and we've done it, but it's a lot to take in. And so what we wanted to do tonight was really focus on student voice. So we're very proud that we, in our survey that we submitted out, we had 1,978 students participate, and that's a nice percentage of our high school students. It also, you can see, is represented at Belton High School, New Tech, and Lake Belton High. We had nice participation rates at all 3 campuses. Of those numbers, just know that 1,100 of those students, so 1,106, indicated on the survey that they have taken or are taking an advanced course, whether it's an AP course or a dual credit course or both. So what we chose was that we didn't want to just ask those students some things. We actually wanted to ask all of our students what courses they would like. We use this twofold. One, to gather data for what we're discussing tonight, but then we also wanted to see if there were any courses out there that in general students wish we offered that we do not offer. And so the way that the survey was designed, the first, you put in your name, your first name, your last name, your ID, your campus, and your grade level. Then you answered the question, what advanced courses have you taken? AP, dual credit, AP and dual credit, or neither AP or dual credit. If you answer neither, you just go straight to the end with a question of what are the biggest stressors for you in high school? What courses would you like to see us add? Thank you for participating. I mean, it was just real short. If you answered that you were taking an AP course or dual credit, then we ask you questions in terms of how many have you taken, how many AP exams, and we'll go over those results. What are your biggest impacts of choosing courses?
How much time do you spend on homework? Does this impact your extracurricular involvement? So all of those questions that we'll talk about tonight are specific to the population of I am taking an advanced course, because that's what we wanted to know, right? And we wanted to kind of isolate that to them. So let's just kind of go through. So we did have, and as we discussed the results, this could impact a little bit. We did have about 30%, 30% in our 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, our 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, sorry. Our lowest participating group was at 11%, and that's our seniors. And so that would be at the level where you take the most courses, so that could impact a little, but we felt like overall it was enough students responding to know that we were getting, it was 140 students, so that's gonna be almost your entire top 20%. So we felt like we got a strong response level there. So first question was advanced courses taken. So on average, how many courses are you taking? The majority of our students that responded in the advanced course group were taking AP only courses at 44%, and then we had students taking both AP represented and dual credit. Dual credit was the smallest number, and that was 63 students. Then we asked, of the courses, AP courses you're taking, how many do you take? And so what we know in there is that about 20% of the students responding are taking 4 or more AP courses. So they're taking a significant number of AP courses in their career. Remember, we did have a lower percentage of seniors, and that it would be where you're highest. So you could consider that 6 plus or more or 8 courses or more might be a little lower than it actually is. This is student voice. We're gonna bring in some other data later to show you what happens in class rankings. With our AP exams, what we found was that about 10% of our students reported taking 4 or more exams, in contrast to 20% reporting they were taking 4 or more courses. We know that to be true, and we'll show that when we look at AP exam data. So our students take the AP course, they do not always take the exam. So we asked them, why do you not take the AP exams? And the common responses we got were that they are expensive, and they are. They are around $85 unless you qualify. That's all right. Okay. And then there's also a cost often to get the credit at the college level. So with AP exams, a 3 or higher will generally get you college credit. That's all dependent on what college you're attending. That could change for every university. But there's also a fee, usually with the university, for them to accept those scores. So it's an additional cost for earning the credit. Some of them reported it's not needed for my college, so you could be taking a course in high school that is not a part of your college pathway, and you might not need, but you chose to take it in high school. Several said they felt unprepared. It was just too much stress, or that they really just wanted the GPA points and they didn't need to take the exam. So in our practice right now, in our policy, according to our policy, you do earn the weighted points for the course because you took the course, not how you do on an exam.
Yeah, a real quick question.
Absolutely.
On the graph to the left, the pie chart there, when I look at that, I see that 66.6%, 693 kids took one exam.
That's correct.
That is how many exams they took, but the reasons over on the right-hand side are for not taking exams. The only reason I bring that up, it's not like all of these kids over on the left didn't take exams.
Oh, yes, I apologize if that's confusing. So what we're trying to show is that in the slide before that, we had 44% of the students say they only took one course, but yet 66% say they only took one exam. And so there is a disconnect. There's not a strong alignment between how many courses you take and how many exams. And then when you're not taking exams, we want to know why you're not taking them. But yes, you're correct. I'm gonna keep going, or do you want me to pause? Do you have some questions right around there?
I'm confused by that. Stat, I mean, it
I'm
doesn't
sorry.
make sense to me. How can you,
Well, but
more people take an exam than took the class?
But they,
No,
Than took
no,
a
it's
class.
not, so somebody took 2 AP classes, but they only took 1 AP.
Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
Or something like that.
Thank you, I'm sorry, I apologize. Yeah, so, everyone followed that, so we had 66% of our students say, 40, let me go back, so I don't wanna confuse anyone.
Can we go back to slide?
Go back the slide. We have 44% of our students say, I'm only taking one course. So we shouldn't have, if everybody was taking a course and taking an exam, that would match when I see number of exams. What we see is 66% say, I'm only taking one exam. So what we know is kids take the course, but they do not take the exam. And we have a high percentage of that. And so you can look at, you see it represented in that one exam. You also see 10% of the students saying, I'm going to take 4 more exams, but 20% say, I'm going to take the course. So it's about less than half are taking the exam. And then when we said, well, why don't you take an exam? I mean, you're taking the course, why not take the exam? Because remember, if I take an AP course and I'm on a pathway that I want that to provide me with college credit, I have to take the exam or it will not matter for the college
My
or
question
university.
is on these reasons for not taking exams, we don't have a percentage on what their answers were.
We do not.
So the one I'm most curious about is feel unprepared. That's
Absolutely.
the one I'm most curious. Like, what would be the percentage of kids who said they didn't take it because they didn't feel prepared? That one scares me.
Okay, so I can pull that out and look at how many reported that. That concerns us, right? So that's something we know we need to address as well, is that we want you to feel prepared when you take. Of course, that will also play into thinking through how many courses can I really take and really be prepared for. Because the time commitment that AP College Board says you need for an AP exam is significant. And not really designed for taking 4 courses at a time.
Yeah, I think that these answers have a lot of power and like we need to know
Okay,
specifically what's heavier here.
Yeah, more data and that would be good.
absolutely. Then we go to dual credit courses taken. We had 63 students responding in terms of they're only taking dual credit courses or they're taking dual credit and, there's 63 that took dual credit only. This also captures anyone who is taking dual credit and AP. And we have students that do that. And what we found here is that 34% are planning to take 1 course. 39% plan to take 2 to 3 courses. So we have over half, about 60% of our students who plan to take between 1 and 3 dual credit courses. Then we ask them, have you ever avoided a class because of the weighting policy? And we asked the exact question was, let's see, I'll have to find, have you taken a course, have you ever avoided the selection of a course because it was not weighted or not weighted enough in GPA determination? That was a yes or no question. Almost 20% said yes. And then we asked if you answered yes, what courses did you avoid? And then what you'll see is what we expected to see. And it's every elective course, CTE course. We had we had art in there. One that was a surprise that I really, to be honest with you, hadn't thought about because we think a lot about CTE courses and electives was our special topics in history. So where we offer the special topics in history course, which is very exciting, and it's an on-level course. And so kids are not choosing to take that course because of the weighting, and they in turn could take an AP course at the same time.
What struck me was 2 things. One is how many of these courses they listed are medical prep,
Mm-hmm.
which
Saw that too,
that's
yeah.
fascinating right there. Okay, that tells you what they're interested in and what they probably want to study in college, or at least want to explore. The other one is kids are going ahead and taking band and athletics. That's the two that they do in
Right,
spite of any barrier. I find that interesting, they're not on the list.
right, so they'll take that, but not art. Art didn't make, another one that's not, that was not listed on here, but I will tell you it's coming up in conversations right now is art engineering. That's a math and science path credit, and it's an on-level course. And that's not, so this is telling for when we're answering the question that we go back to the start of this is, are there barriers that prevent kids from following
But
the
I did
pathway?
notice that that engineering class was not listed, nor was computer science. And I think that's telling too, because perhaps they're not interested in that class. Okay.
And computer science has 2 AP options when they get to the higher levels, so it's leading towards 2
Right.
AP courses, whereas the engineering is not.
Yes. And I've discussed with you my thoughts on that.
Okay, and then we asked for reasons for course selection, and this one we asked them to identify their top 3 reasons for, I think it was the question for course selection, and the one that came up the most, or received the highest votes was interest, that they were choosing courses for interest. Followed by what supports their post-high school plans. When we asked next about extracurricular activities, we asked the question, has your course load impacted your ability to be involved in extracurricular activities, sports, fine arts, and clubs? What we found is that 6.2% of students responding said yes, to the point I've chosen not to participate, whereas 18.6 said ranked it as a 4. So that would indicate to us you're still there and participating, but it's impacting you, but you haven't you stay with it. So to when we looked at that was a very high number. I mean, from 3 to 5 was leaning towards there's a significant impact for me, and that was really over. About 60% of the response. Then we asked the question, homework. How much time do you spend on homework? Now remember, this question again is, this particular question was responded to by any student that's chosen advanced courses. So was not asked of all students. It was for those that indicated they were taking an advanced course. And what, again, is very concerning from a just general, from a teaching and learning department is we have 15% of our students reporting 3 or more hours a night on homework. That's a lot of time on homework when you also think about the involvement kids are in activities and jobs and just doing things that they find passion in. That's a lot of time. Outside of the day, so school ends at 4:30. That's 7:30, assuming they started right away, and they don't. So, I think that's where you get into kids that are working late, not getting maybe the sleep that they even need as a teenager. And then sources of stress. This question was asked by all students. What is your greatest source of stress in school? And what we found is that the amount of homework came in as the single highest stressor. We also found that it was interesting that personal expectations and parent expectations were very similar in line. I think that speaks highly of our students, that they hold a lot of expectation, maybe to the point that they're stressed out, but they do hold a lot on themselves, in addition to what they know their parents expect of them. And then GPA came in as also included in that factor. And in this, we asked again what are your top 3 stressors? And so you saw what were the most frequently responded stressors included. And so this is coming from our students. We wanted to share this result tonight from the survey and get questions from you, thoughts around this. What do you see or think of when we go through this data?
I got a question.
Okay.
What does this tell you in conjunction with EIC local?
I think it tells us quite a bit still. I think that when we look at the number of kids that are the coursework that kids are avoiding, and we see a lot of classes in there that are in our CTE that I think are some classes kids would love to, like, where's culinary arts in an interest level and a life skill that kids would like to take and don't feel there's room because they're concerned about making sure they get all the AP courses in. I think we have kids taking a lot of AP courses, and I think that's a contributor to how much time they spend on homework. That impacts what they told us that it's impacting their activity participation. And I think it impacts the amount of, I think it impacts their preparedness for exams as well. If I'm taking 8, I would probably be taking more like 5 courses at a time. That's a lot of homework. That's a lot of exams that I'm not preparing for or don't feel prepared for. And I would say the College Board will tell you should, an hour or 2 a night.
And they don't recommend taking 5 courses.
They don't, and
then
right.
honestly, most of the courses are like, oh, that's for senior level, but it's like not every single course could be a senior level course. But they say that about anything from psychology, AP geography, AP chemistry, senior level course. Although most of Texas, obviously, has that.
Right.
For 9th grade.
For 9th grade.
Florida too.
So what's the driving force behind course selection?
Well, our kids tell us that interest does play a high level. So if I'm listening to the kids,
And that encouraged me.
they're telling us that it's interest, but they're telling us it supports their high school plan afterwards. That's also encouraging. I'm just not sure it leaves room for passion classes, interest classes, is what I felt like we heard.
Does the data tell us anything about that? But for my plans for college, I would have taken this course.
I think that's answered in I would have taken classes I would have taken if we hadn't had the policy. Or a course based on the course weighting. Then I would take these courses because I'm interested in them.
I can tell you that's true just for my own house.
Yep.
Yeah. I've got an aspiring culinary arts student who won't take it because of GPS. Yeah, right. I mean, when I look at this, right, I look at the AP courses taken versus exams taken, right? And that if you just look at like the 4 and above, and kind of where like 20% of the kids are taking 4 or more courses, right? But then only 10% of the kids are taking the test to go with it, right? So you start to ask some questions around these tiers that we have, right? And why are the tiers there? Are we get like the top GPA tier, right? The next one down. Like, why are they there? Or should they be there? Like, if I know the AP classes are rigorous, there's no doubt about it, right? But they're also not taking tests to potentially get the credit. So, but you're getting credit from dual enrollment, right? And so, should we have those 2 tiers? Should it be separate, right? A question comes to mind that we talked about that before. When I look at the reasons for course selection, the fact that the number 1 category is interest, I'm actually happy to see that, right? And part of what I've been doing, I don't know if it's true or not, that is we got a pretty good breadth of classes, right? From an offerings perspective, we've got offerings that do cover what the students want, right? So it feels good there. But certainly, you know, the 200 that are sitting at, I'm not taking a class because of course waiting, I mean, that's a significant percentage. I don't know.
So I think your question, the first one, is one thing that we're asking ourselves, which is, should we have the tiers between AP and dual credit? Should this be separate or the same, because they both lead to the same opportunity for college credit earned? Another question that I feel like we have in the policy, we haven't talked as much about in here, we oftentimes leaned it on the tiers, is what courses do we weight? So right now, we weight all AP courses, where we could, like all AP courses in social studies, we weight them all. Well, one thing we could do is we could say we will weight only courses that are the credit for US history, government economics, world history. Those 3 areas, just those 3, the course rate. What that would do is it would free up an opportunity to say, you know what? I want to take AP psychology. I want to take AP, that one, I'm going to give an example, and AP, I want to take on-level special topics. Now those aren't even in competition for weighting because we've isolated which courses. We're not weighting all courses, we're weighting some. And I'm not saying we are not going to do that right now. It's just when you start to think about that policy, it's not just what's on in the tier. It's also in the paragraph that talks about what courses we will weight. Will we weight all courses in English? We weight all courses in math above Algebra 1. We weight all courses in science. Well, we could tighten that. And then that would free up some space for kids to choose. Do you want to be in an AP psychology class, or did you want to take culinary arts? Which one really, truly benefits the pathway you're on? That would be an option. Okay. They live it every day too. So it's just things to think about. We're still discussing.
You know, and it's complicated because while it is a significant number of kids that are answering that they're taking it for course weighting and GPA and things like that, the majority of them are saying that's not their reason. So we do need to look at what the majority is saying. We can't ignore that just because we do see this other number. And if we were to change an entire system, I mean, if that's where we're headed, for a minority of students, not the vast majority who feel fine with it, then we just have to be careful, and I know you guys are.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, are you in the extracurricular, are you looking at the course?
Yeah, I'm looking at this reason for course selection and then also the extracurricular question. The bar graph.
Right, and the extracurricular,
Yeah.
so that's representing about, so to your point, 236 students that are in the 4 to 5. If you pick up the 3, or 4 to 5 is where I'm looking at, that's like 20%, that's of the 1,100. So it's about 20% of the kids that are taking advanced courses are saying it's hard to participate. But 80% did not say.
And on AP exams, the reasons for not taking exams,
Mhm.
those reasons given, is that something that you give them as a choice, or do they write that in?
Let me go back to my question. It was open-ended. If you chose not to take an AP exam, please explain why. So it was a completely open-ended. So we tried to ask open-ended questions, just so that we wouldn't be planting seeds in their head as to what was the reason.
I think that's why I find that list so interesting.
Sure, so I can certainly break down for you by percentage who said what.
I know my kids wanted to take accounting. We wanted them to take accounting. It's such a valuable thing for life, and there was just no room. There was no more room. And then we always felt like it should be a math class, and you could even, I don't know if there's an AP accounting, but that would have been nice too.
I don't think there's an AP accounting.
But
I
that
think-
feels like it a little bit when you see all the spreadsheets.
Yeah,
But I think that goes back to the essence of that list, I think, and what they're not taking. And yet, when you look on that list, I mean, every one of those courses has value. Many of those courses have value in what they may pursue later outside of, like you mentioned earlier, many are medical prep courses. That would be, taking medical microbiology, anatomy, if you're planning on going to school, to have that in hospital would be very beneficial to you, and yet, you're not gonna take that, and you could potentially be choosing an AP history course over that because of the weight. And yet that might really not be lined up to what your plan is.
yeah. So is there a way to weight these higher, do you think,
So
some of them?
there's a way to do anything we want to.
That's
do.
right. Good job, Deanna. All right.
There is a will, there is a way. I think you could look at that as two ways. I think you could go down a path of saying, let's start looking at how we want to weight our CTE courses higher. We could also re-engage in a non-ranking concept where there is no weight.
Is there a way to do something in between the two and only rank a few?
Again, there's a way to
That's what I
do
like to hear.
anything we want to do.
But to use your example earlier, you used an example of only certain core courses would be used for.
Correct, we
additional-
could do that.
Could there also be a limit or a number, say 5 courses are chosen by the student to be calculated in rank, but no more than 5? And so the only reason I say something like that is if you can get to a point where GPA is no longer the driving force behind some of it, that discussion as a family about accounting is a whole lot different. Because then as a family, you can sit there and say, hey, it's not about GPA bump anymore. You're not gonna get any more GPA points. This is about life and what we want you to learn as a family and as a student. Because I think the fear that I have is the more you rank, the more it might become about those points unless you rank it all. And then all of a sudden it's all equal.
Absolutely.
Why you rank it.
So yes, I'm looking at Tiffany shaking her head, and I'm glad because I thought she might think some writers. Yes, yes. What I don't know, what it would push us in our system and how we do that, because the system that we have is our Skyward system is pretty rigid, and so. But yes, we could find a way to do that. Also, and I want to go back on your question and use the example I believe Barbara mentioned earlier. With our computer science, so our computer science pathway leads to 2 AP courses. So another way would be to take our medical pathway and say it will lead to 2 advanced weighted courses in those junior, senior years. And so it frees up again that opportunity to choose your way.
I'm gonna come back to what I said before, is that it will encourage, something like that would very much encourage some kids to then free themselves and free their schedule to take some things because they're not gonna worry about their classroom rank.
Right.
There is still always, even if you did away with class rank, there will always be kids who only take the AP because they're trying to get to the school they want to get to. And that's not gonna
Absolutely.
change, it will not matter what you do.
That's right. And so I think what we want to think about that, and that's when our conversations next time, and what we've heard from the colleges. So we wanted tonight to really focus on kind of what our kids are telling us, and then we'll look at our data in our colleges. Yes, I think what we have to do is think through, have we opened the door for every student to make that decision? Now, when they make the decision, if they stick with their AP, that's absolutely fine. But when we write a policy, we're trying to have looking at this conversation around how does the policy open the door? And I go back to that question that we had, which was, the very beginning, which is, how does do we have barriers that exist that prevent students from following the pathway? And removing that barrier, especially if that barrier is living in policy. Because to your point, I want the conversations, like you've said, with the family making that very best decision for their student.
Well, I like where you're headed with pathways that could lead to better weighted classes. I like that. What do y'all think? Quiet people.
I'm crunching numbers there.
There's a piece that I
He's
want to point
working
out
on
too.
kids' GPA.
No.
Oh, God.
Sometimes I think we lose track of the fact that we are high school and not college. And sometimes we create all these systems to earn more and more credits and to do more and more things. But yet high school has a legitimate role in the educational process for kids. And so when you say things like the medical professions, imagine if a kid could take a medical professions class in high school, and let's just say they decide they don't want to do that. What if they save their family and all of that too? Like, we want kids to be able to explore and find their passions for later in life. And I do worry that our policies are preventing that a little bit.
Any other questions, thoughts? You wanna add?
Look, as I look at the driving questions and think about it, I don't know that I have even a guess right now to answer those questions. I don't know if I have enough information to even give an educated guess yet.
So what would help, so what else could we provide? So I will tell you our next policy meeting, we are planning to bring to you what we learned in the transcript data digs that were conducted, where we looked at where did you fall in class rank for the classes of 18, 19, and 20. And with where you fell, what was the average GPA of those classes in each of those ranks, and then how many AP courses did you take, how many dual credit courses did you take. So we'll be bringing that data forward, and then we'll also be bringing data forward on conversations with universities in terms of what are they looking at, how do they value AP versus dual credit, what did they look at when they're making an admissions decision on a student. Is there anything in specific? And then we did ask about, does that change, because you've mentioned for not only university acceptance, but for different colleges, different, like a college within the universities and business college. Now, I'll tell you, there's a lot of, outside of the main university, there becomes a lot of just, it's up to that individual, and that changes with every university and every department area.
Are you also asking them about the class rank, like schools that aren't ranked?
We did. We asked them how they handle schools that do not rank and what they see in that, and what changes in their process if the high school is not ranking. And I say we, but I would just like to give credit to Barbara Epperson who made all of those calls and pulled all that data together.
This is a teaser, just so you'll come back to the next policy.
That's right, that's right.
This is like a preview.
But it does help for you to know what's coming ahead, so that I can also find out, like you said, you're still not sure, what else, is there anything else you can think of that you need? We certainly want to bring that forward as well.
A few meetings ago, you mentioned Westlake and what they did when they revamped their policy.
Yes.
And I know you and I discussed that a little bit following that meeting. We were going to look more into that.
Yes.
And how it helped them improve, I believe it was college admission, was it not?
Yes.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, and actually, we also talked to Brunswick ISD about the same thing, improving college admissions too. So, the Eanes was kind of the first to go, so their data, started from that first year that they did it, I think 13, around that. Brunswick just did it 2 years ago, and they already have some raw student data showing some different numbers.
And we also brought up, we're working on getting the data set that'll tell you exactly what our college billing rates are 2 year, 4 year, and so we can talk a little bit about that to what we might want to see.
Yes, and we are in the process of getting that. We submitted our application, but that's great.
So we still have more studying to do.
Yeah.
We do.
Thank you for your work on this, Deanna, and y'all.
And that team,
And
right?
y'all. This is like
Thank y'all.
detailed and hard and good.
A lot of work, a lot of time.
Can I ask a
Well worth it.
related question, although it's somewhat
Only if it's related.
down a rabbit hole?
It's okay.
How do the AP courses, and maybe even dual credit for that matter, like factor into UIL eligibility?
Excellent question.
No, look at my Morgan ready.
So excellent question. We have a list of courses that are, and Mike, I'm gonna let you correct me if I'm wrong, that are considered honors courses that kids are held harmless for you, for no cost no play.
That's right, and that was done not by UIL action, but by legislative action years ago. The school district can impose stricter guidelines if they choose to, but most choose not to because it would discourage kids from taking more challenging courses. So, I think the one exception that would not be considered a honors or dual credit course would be pre-cal. Whenever the legislature pre-cal. Anyway, pre-cal is exempt by state law.
Yeah.
Everything else is, if it's an honors course, the school district can impose stricter rules, but honors courses are not, do not count towards the base model of no pass, no play eligibility.
Okay.
Any other?
I know you're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
I'm just waiting. It's all good.
No, I've had a couple interesting conversations this week that
Okay,
are not exactly on this, so I won't go there, but
okay.
yeah.
All right.
Matt, anything else?
We've got 5 or 6 more policies if you want to talk about them tonight, but we can, just kidding. No, we appreciate Deanna and the team and all of their work. This is a complicated one, but again, if we're switching mindset to each and every kid, we want kids to be able to thrive in our system. So examining what our policy is that allow kids to thrive, I think is a good thing to do.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. We stand adjourned.